And the title of this here is kind of tongue-in-cheek about can we psychoanalyze the Irish? And it's a trope that one might have heard actually occasionally. You can't psychoanalyze the Irish. I suppose I'm going to ask you, and Sean Kennedy, hello Sean, how are you? A friend of us all here, asks that question, can the Irish be psychoanalyzed? And the second part of that question is, presuming that they can to the degree that anybody can, is why do the Irish actually love that supposed fact about themselves? Oh, you can't psychoanalyze us. We delight in that notion. Anything of those.
Yeah, it's a great question, and an inevitable question from your titling of the talk. And hello Sean Kennedy out there. Of course, the Irish can be psychoanalyzed. They have been psychoanalyzed for decades. But I suppose no one is quite sure of the provenance of this supposed assertion of Freud's that the Irish can't be psychoanalyzed. And I heard in the last number of years that it was actually something that Freud said about the Welsh. That the Welsh couldn't be analysed, but it really wasn't about the Welsh. It was about the Welsh man that he had grown particularly frustrated with, Ernest Jones, who he was starting to fall out with, and who had, if you know the history of Freud, had entertained notions, shall we say, of getting together with Freud's daughter, Anna Freud. So I can't verify that's true, but that's a fun way of thinking about it. The idea of liking this notion that we are unanalyzable, well, I suppose it does kind of fit in with with the idea of sort of competent individualism. Nobody likes to think really that they can't analyze themselves or that they can't figure things out themselves. So in a way that sort of fits in with a kind of ego idea that we have that an analysis going into analysis with someone else and other is required in order to get to the bottom of who one is, or to gain better insight into who one is. That's a kind of blow. That's a narcissistic blow to the ego. Why it's a particular narcissistic blow to the Irish ego? Well, I mean, we might be able to trace, I don't know what the others of you think, and some of you may have a much better answer than me, but I mean, the fact that we were so under the influence of Catholicism for so long, and that is actually very significant. And with the decline of religion, with the secularization of the country, and really with the decline of other, I suppose in some ways the legitimacy of our institutions, there has been a growing demand for therapy and for analysis. So you could say that with the decline of the church, it perhaps freed people, and as Freud predicted, he predicted that people would become neurotic with the decline of religion. That's in the very famous Civilization and Its Discontents, and I think that is very, very much the case. That whatever your thoughts about religion, it does provide all kinds of things, like, for example, the notion of cause, and cause as external. And psychoanalysis would take a very different approach, which would locate cause internally. So they're incompatible in that way. So that may be playing into that in some kind of way. It occurs to me.
Great, thanks. I would continue the question of sexuality, actually, and I know you're particularly interested in sexuality and in queer studies. And I wonder, can we assume here in Ireland, with the decriminalisation of homosexuality and the gay marriage referendum, about which we're still, I think, applauding ourselves, can we assume that issues of queer sexuality are no longer the stuff the Irish analyst has to deal with? Or are they?
I wish that were so. It's a lovely idea. I see absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever. I see no evidence that that suffering, shall we call it, in the field of sexuality is on the decline for anybody, including those who identify as gay or lesbian or bisexual or queer. Indeed, nowadays, gender neutral, non-binary. There's a range of ways in which people can identify. But I have to say, I see the same old problems. I see the same old problems of relationships not working out. Things are still not working out between two people. That hasn't changed. There's no question that the advent of these legislations has made a huge difference to people and lived lives. But at a psychological level, I still see people struggling to come out, which may surprise you. But it continues to be a difficulty for people. And if you think about it, it will make sense, because even though it has become much more socially acceptable now to, that heteronormativity isn't quite in the ascendancy that it was, it continues to be in the ascendancy. Let's not forget that. That's the first thing. But secondly, parents have expectations of their children. And that's never going to change. And children, no matter how old they are terrified of not meeting with those expectations and with disappointing their parents. And that problem is probably going to be around till the end of time in different forms. So it continues to be a difficulty for people and young people. While at the same time, I see lots of evidence of young people coming out now in school, in secondary school, and having a much better time of it than people would have had even 10, 15 years ago. So there are real advances. But when people are coming to therapy, they're not coming for what's gone well. They're coming for the difficulties. And so basically, I would say relationships continue not to work out, and coming out continues to be quite a traumatic process, I think, for some people.